On this episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, I welcome Dr. Toby Campbell to the Buck and Honey's remote studios. Dr. Campbell is an oncologist specializing in lung cancer and palliative care in Madison, Wisconsin. He shares what it's like to navigate life-changing conversations with patients, the coping strategies that sustain him, and the power of compassion when facing serious illness. This is a thoughtful, meaningful conversation. So be a good one. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What is up wherever you are, whatever you're doing? I hope you're having a great day. Welcome to another episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Decora. We are in the Buck and Honey's remote studios on the east side of our great capital city of Madison, Wisconsin. You can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and YouTube at Survive and Thrive 8791. You can follow the podcast and get access to previous episodes on Facebook, on YouTube, really wherever you can get the podcast at Survive and Thrive 8791. The podcast. Don't forget to hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you listen to the show. Leave me a comment if you liked what you heard. If there's a topic or you know a guest who would love to share their story, email me at tdecora@gmail.com. Glad you could join us. Our mission is to share stories and conversations that make you cry, laugh, and think, stimulating emotions, creating laughter, and inspiring the mind. A new episode will air on Monday and Thursday morning featuring a wide range of guests. The podcast will touch on many subjects such as, but not limited to, grief, loss of a loved one, recovery, professional setback, mental illness, success despite challenges, etc. Our guests will share how they learn to survive and thrive. Before I introduce our esteemed guest, I'd like to highlight our website, surviveandthrive8791.com. You can see what we are doing and the events we are hosting. If you're a business or an advocate for mental health and recovery, we invite you to partner with us through sponsorship opportunities. Please contact us at surviveandthrive8791@gmail.com. This is our guest and episode intro. And according to the internet, and the internet is always right, correct, Dr. Campbell?
I mean, it's mostly right, Tim.
It's mostly right. I have not 100 plus episodes. I have not heard that one yet, but I'm not sure if this pertains to your house, but in my household, I do not need the internet. I do not need Siri or Alexa. I've got my wife, and she's always right.
100%.
Ooh, there was a little bit of dead silence there. That's okay, though. Yeah, yours too. Happy wife, happy life. According to an AI, artificial intelligence overview, there isn't one exact number for oncologists providing palliative care, but it's a growing area with roughly 27 to 28,000 oncologists in the U.S., mostly medical and home onc, and over 7,600 board-certified palliative care physicians, with many oncologists incorporating palliative skills, symptom management, emotional support, alongside cancer treatment for improved quality of life, even with curative intent. Our guest is just that doctor who provides for cancer patients and palliative care. Today, I welcome Dr. Toby Campbell to the Buck and Honey's remote studios. Dr. Campbell grew up in the state of Oregon and Virginia and graduated from Wilson Memorial High School and is a proud Hornet. After high school, Dr. Campbell would take his talents to first the University of Virginia, where he would receive his undergrad degree and attend medical school. He would complete his residency at the University of Wisconsin and earn a fellowship from Northwestern University. Today, I'm so glad you could join us, Dr. Toby Campbell. What is up?
Thank you for having me, Tim. I mean, we're up. We're in the virtual studio. It's December. There's like a foot of snow on the ground, and yet it's raining, which means that I'm going to have water in my basement when I get home. That's what's going to be up this evening.
Oh, no. I got Xander Solutions. I wish they were a proud partner of the podcast here, but yeah, if you got some cracks in your foundation, Xander Solutions out of Verona, they do a great job of patching up. They did some work for us. A couple places here where the studios are on the east side, and then also in our previous home over in Wanakee. So if you're looking for some guys to do that, Xander Solutions.
And if we're looking for a sponsor, they should call you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what about the snow and that cold snap that we had a couple of days ago, and it's actually going to come in and land for a day and then zip out? How about that?
I mean, it's been wild. I moved here, honestly, Tim. I'm from the South. I was born in Louisiana, grew up a bit in Oregon, but Southern Oregon where it's hot, and then Virginia, and I came here to interview for residency in December, late December, and Lake Mendota was freezing. I remember because I'd never seen frozen water like that before. I mean, it was completely foreign to me, and I thought, man, I want to live here where water freezes. Can you believe this? So
and we can walk on it.
I've come to really enjoy the cold.
And we can walk on it about 5 or 6 months out of, well, maybe not 6 months, but 4 or 5 months out of the year, we can walk on it and be relatively safe. I was going to ask, so it probably doesn't get this cold in certainly Louisiana, but definitely, again, Oregon, state of Oregon. I got to pronounce that right because a lot of people in the Madison area say Oregon, but then
right.
Oregon, and then certainly Virginia.
Oregon, yep. No, I'd never seen frozen water before. In Virginia, I rented a small apartment on a farm, and there was a pond on the farm, and that pond never froze. I mean, I lived there for 5 years. It never froze. So, no, even a small pond didn't freeze, and it wasn't deep either. So, yeah, it doesn't happen in other parts of the country.
That's a little mind-blowing for me, but hey, it is what it is. Are you looking forward to the holidays? As an oncologist, do you get some time off, or are you on your regular kind of rotations of being at the hospital? How does that work?
We all got to take turns. The hospital, of course, never closes. Mm-hmm. This year, I am off on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. I'm working the rest of that week, but I was able to get vacation the week following. So the family and I are heading out of town, actually driving north to find more cold weather to do a little bit of probably skiing and snowshoeing, that sort of thing, the week following Christmas.
Do you have relatives that come in, or do you celebrate with other families? How does that work?
My wife's family she's one of 6, so that's a large family. We often get together, although this year we're not, but we often get together with my wife's family. My parents live in Virginia, and then I have a brother who lives in Honolulu, so we live too far apart to get together, but often with my wife's family.
Yeah, we're kind of in that rotation now with 2 of our 3 kids are married, and this year we happen to be on that schedule of they're all coming here, but then next year they fly off and go to the other in-laws. Fortunately, our in-laws are not very far from here, but I know if I had a brother in Honolulu, Hawaii, I would be seeing him as much as possible.
It's a pretty good place. It's amazing.
Yeah. Before we get to your story, I need to talk about our sponsor. Our sponsor, Buck and Honey's restaurants, are a place that people can escape to. For me, it's a great escape from cooking dinner. First question, do you cook? And if so, what is your genre, style, or cuisine?
So my wife does most of the cooking. When I cook, I tend to cook Cajun meals, hearkening back to my childhood and my heritage. Ragin' Cajun. Yeah, I don't know how ragin' I am, but I do Cajun cooking. And I like to bake. I would do more, making dough is one of my favorite things, so I really love to bake bread.
I just started doing some of that myself recently. You peruse the Instagram, and there's a lot of cool things on there, and they make it look really cool. And my bread somehow doesn't turn out quite as yummy as it looks, but I'm 1 for 3 now, so I gotta work on my bread. Plus, jambalaya, gumbo. Does that hit the spot for you?
Oh yeah. Yep, for sure.
My mouth is watering. With their great food and drink menu, 5-star customer service, and a welcoming and vibrant atmosphere, people keep coming back with locations in Sun Prairie, Monona, Waunakee, and Mount Horeb. Most communities in Dane County, which encompasses the Madison metropolitan area, can get to a Buck and Honey's within 10 to 15 minutes. And a little drum roll. Got a very acoustically sound Menards table. Have you been to Buck and Honey's?
I have. The one in Monona.
The one in Monona. Okay. and I know you've been there, but you don't remember what you had, I'm going to encourage you to grab the Bomber's Special Pizza next time you go to Buck and Honey's.
I'm in.
All in. On the podcast, our guests follow the format for sharing their story like this. In segment 1, we talk about what was it like. So we'll get into Dr. Campbell's history, what happened to get Dr. Campbell on the podcast. And in segment 2, we continue to talk about what happened and get into what it's like now. And we discuss Dr. Campbell's 5 suggestions for thriving. What was it like before and what happened? So you grew up in the state of Oregon and then rural Virginia, born in Louisiana. What was life like growing up in those places? Because we have a lot of listeners, a little over close to 60% that are tuned in from Wisconsin. So paint us a picture of what it's like in Oregon and Virginia and Louisiana.
I had a mostly rural upbringing. So we spent a lot of time outside, Tim, doing things that were maybe not so smart. I probably should have died at least once on a 3-wheeler accident. But, you just roll that thing over and keep going. So I think probably many people can picture. I mean, I spent a lot of time in the woods. I still do. I like to camp and backpack, but that's kind of how I grew up, was spending time outside, whether it was riding on something or, chasing something through the woods or swimming in a pond or a creek or those sorts of things. I would say it feels pretty similar to Wisconsin, to be perfectly honest. I think both Oregon and Virginia, you've got perhaps you got a little bit bigger mountains, right, in those 2 states. Certainly bigger in Oregon than in Virginia, and bigger than in Wisconsin. But you have beautiful forests and lots of wonderful things to do outside. And I was one of 3 boys, and so we were always doing something. This was back in the day where, I remember my mom would sometimes literally lock us out of the house, you guys you're out until dinner. I'll see you when dinner is ready.
I think I saw that.
Then you just,
I saw that Instagram post somewhere where there was a younger guy going, all right, so you're telling me you drank out of a water hose and you did this and you did that. Why didn't you just go inside and grab a glass of water? And then the person responds, who is from your age and maybe a little bit older, we couldn't go inside. We got kicked out. Get out. And you couldn't go inside. So that's why we drank out of a hose.
Absolutely.
Interesting stuff.
You got to let it run for a little bit, right? Because it doesn't taste great for the first, few seconds the water's coming out of the hose. Kids don't know that?
No, they don't know that. Tell us about your family growing up, mom and dad. And you said they live in Virginia, and you are the oldest of 3 boys. Go ahead and spin some yarns about your mom and dad and your brothers.
My mom is a teacher. She taught elementary school.
Praise the Lord.
My dad is my dad's a emergency room physician. So he worked a lot, and he worked, his ER work is, of course, 24 hours a day, so he was a shift worker, and so, there would be times, especially those times when we get kicked out of the house might be because Dad had worked all night and, needed to sleep, and so then we'd just get kicked out for that day so that Dad could sleep during the day. My folks are great, very curious people, always very involved and engaged in what we were doing. All 3 of us grew up playing soccer. My youngest brother was the most athletically talented of all of us. Actually, got recruited to play sports in high school and things like that. But we grew up, school was always important to my parents and to my family in general. And so we grew up knowing that school was important, but family was important, and that's what we did.
The apple didn't fall far from the tree with you going into becoming a doctor, and really your mom and dad being of service to different segments of the community, the students growing up, and then certainly people coming in with needing some kind of care to get put back together. And, I certainly appreciate the work your mom did, because I was a teacher for 32 years and then, go to the doctor and want to get put back together or feel better. You graduated from Wilson Memorial High School and you're a proud Hornet. What were some of your favorite memories from high school?
Well, I went to 3 high schools, 2 in Oregon, in different cities in Oregon, because we moved twice when I was in high school, and then to Wilson. And I would say that my favorite memories from Wilson were actually learning that I would be okay if you dropped me into a new place that was really different. Moving from Oregon to Virginia meant, among other things, like listening to country music and being in school with people who described themselves as rednecks, proudly. I always thought that was a slur, but this was like a matter of pride for people. And, I went from a very academic environment to the high school that I graduated from. Graduated about 140 students, and somewhere around 15 or 20 of us went to college. It was a school where many of the kids were in vocational school or had no intention of going past high school. And so it was just a really completely different environment than I was used to. I had grown up playing soccer. I was on the varsity soccer team as a sophomore, and this small school didn't have soccer. So my soccer career ended when I moved to Virginia. So a lot of things changed for me, and yet I learned that I could be myself, and I would be able to make friends, and I would be able to find a path through, even though lots of things that I thought were pillars in my life weren't there anymore.
I noticed you mentioned in some of the things you sent me, questionnaire and questions, you mentioned basketball in there. And of course, basketball is near and dear to my life and my kids' lives and my wife's life. Did you play any basketball then when you were in Oregon and moved to Virginia?
Yeah, I played basketball growing up. We had a basketball court. Well, we had a basketball hoop, I should say, in our driveway growing up. So I always liked playing basketball. I switched really to just playing basketball when we moved to Virginia because the school did have a basketball team. So that became a greater emphasis. And I have continued to play basketball. Now my closest friends are, as my wife calls them, the basketball boys. So basketball is still important to me.
I've played back in my younger days playing with my dentist way back in the day, and he always used to play with his hands closed in fists. And I had to ask him, Doc, what are you going to punch somebody out here? And he goes, Tim, these are my tools. These are my tools. I shouldn't even be out here right now. And I said, then I got a little more informed about things. I said, do you have those, insured by Lloyd's of London? And I was kind of making a joke, and he said, I do. And I'm like, okay. So my question for you is this: do you have your hands and mainly your hands? Are you
I have
registered?
No body parts insured. No body parts insured. Mm-mm. I'm just taking risks.
You're taking risk, calculated risk, but hey, if you've got a lot of time underneath your belt, you're going to be just fine. After high school, you would take your talents to the University of Virginia, the Virginia Cavaliers, and get your undergrad and medical degree there. Tell us about that journey. Did you always want to be a doctor? Did you want to follow in your dad's footsteps?
I guess, Tim, I always thought about it. So I took the classes that you needed to take so that the door was open if I chose that path. But actually, I always thought I would be a teacher and a coach. So as I was completing college, I didn't major in education, so I couldn't be a teacher in the public school system, but I applied for teaching jobs actually at a number of different private schools, and I daydreamed that I could be a teacher and a basketball coach or a soccer coach or both. Mm-hmm. But actually, I did not successfully get a job as a teacher, but I did get into medical school. So life made the decision for me. I went to med school.
And that's a good thing for certainly your patience, and certainly you survived early upbringing where you mentioned that you probably should be dead several times, but we're glad, and certainly our patients are probably glad that you had this kind of chosen for you. Virginia Cavaliers, I've also got in my notes here that you were a mascot. You were the Cavalier. Tell us about that. That sounds interesting.
It's true. I mean, it was kind of a random event. You know, we were as a freshman, and they had tryouts for the cheerleading team, so I actually tried out for the cheerleading team. Mm-hmm. But as the cheerleading team tryouts were going along, I was not, like, as muscular as any of the other guys, and, you know, you're supposed to, like, throw the cheerleaders up into the air and catch them on your hand, which I wasn't actually very good at. And simultaneous with the cheerleading tryouts was the mascot tryouts. And even over the course of the first day or two of tryouts, I realized, I don't think I have the muscles for this, but that mascot thing, that looks pretty cool. So I switched to trying out for mascots. All of this just on a whim. And it turns out I'm, you know, a bit of a ham, and I was pretty good at, you know, you had to learn how to walk, you had to learn, he has certain mannerisms and certain things that the mascot does. Like Bucky Badger's always doing push-ups right after someone scores points on the football field. So you have to learn, like, what are the traditions, what are the mannerisms, how does Bucky walk, how does the Cavalier walk. So it turns out I was able to pick all those things up pretty quickly, and I earned a spot as one of the mascots. There were many mascots. People may not know this. I don't know how many Buckys there are, but I think there's around 20 different people who play Bucky.
Yep.
But at my school, there was also, I don't even know how many, there's quite a number of us. We each had our own costume, so I was issued a costume, and I was women's basketball and men's soccer. Those were the two sports that I was assigned. And so I, you know, would cover those sports. That's what I would do.
Does the Cavalier have a name? So you got Bucky Badger. Was there, let's see, Cavalier, was there Kyle?
They just call him the Cav.
The Kyle the Cavalier?
They just call him the Cav.
The Cav.
They just call him the Cav or the Cav Man sometimes.
And you got to take that home with you? You had that in a chest at home somewhere? Or in the dorm?
I had it in my dorm room. Yeah. You weren't supposed to wear it, like,
unsanctioned.
You were
unsanctioned events.
The university. But I may or may not have, you know, put the costume on a few times in the dorm, you know, for fun.
I love it. After medical school, you would eventually have to go and do a residency. And I think hopefully some of your followers or your patients are going to be listening, but we're darn glad that you came to the University of Wisconsin. And then you would earn, I guess, a subsequent fellowship from Northwestern University. Not too shabby. I mean, being in the Big Ten, I know how hard it is to get into each of those schools. Talk about that.
Yeah, so after you finish college, then you go to medical school. Medical school is 4 years, although there's discussion of making it 3 years. And then you do residency. My residency was in internal medicine, so you could think of that as many people's general doctor is either family medicine or internal medicine. Mm-hmm. So that's a primary care residency. And then after that, from internal medicine, you have a plethora of choices. You could be you could go and do fellowships, so subspecialty training in cardiology or gastroenterology, or for me, I chose oncology and palliative care. And so that fellowship program, which for me was oncology and palliative care, was at Northwestern.
When guests come on and they talk about their profession and how they chose it, and you chose it because kind of life chose it for you, but then as you started to narrow down things, okay, now you're in medical school, now you're going to do a residency. Was there a reason for oncology, or how did that happen?
Yeah. So I think medicine divides out pretty nicely into whether or not you want to work with sick people or well people. So sick people, for example, you know, surgery or critical care, ICU type thing, or emergency medicine, and well people being more like primary care, where most people are doing pretty good, right? They may have a little bit of blood pressure or this or that, but they're doing pretty good. So I knew pretty early on that I liked working with sick people. What I liked about it was that Well, I'll just tell you a brief story. In primary care, when I would see someone for high cholesterol or blood pressure or whatever, I was often seeing them. They would have, maybe left from work and maybe were going back to work afterwards. But when you were taking care of sick people in the hospital and you're meeting with someone, you are often also meeting with family members. These people may have left home and come to the hospital to be there for a day or a week. So the seriousness of the situation meant that I knew I had to have my A game on when I went to meet with this patient and family, because a whole bunch of people are here and they've taken their valuable time to come to be at the hospital to hear what it is that we have to talk about. So that felt important to me, and I liked the intensity of working with sick people. And then if you pick sick people, then you also have to pick whether or not you respond to their sickness quickly or slowly. Quickly is like ICU medicine or ER or surgery. And slow is like oncology and palliative care. So I'm honestly a slow person. I intentionally like to move slow. I like to take my time thinking through problems, how I'm going to solve them and address them. So for me, the perfect marriage would be to combine sick people and slow medicine. And then there's a few different choices there, but oncology and palliative care just fit me really well.
Fit you really well, and I think that's important that anybody going into any kind of profession, you're here to talk about the medical profession, that, what fits you best, and it sounds like you found that fit. And again, you might hear me say this often, and I've already said it a couple of times, is that your patients and people in the Madison area, and a lot of people come from all over the country, I'm not sure about the world, but for sure the country, to get top-notch care. And in Madison, we have that with the hospitals that we have here. And so I'm probably saying this correctly, that we're darn glad that Dr. Campbell has come here and is doing the work and has stayed here. And you still have, a number of years left, and we're all darn glad about that. Because our listeners want to hear the rest of your story and what brought you to the podcast, I need to talk about our sponsor one more time. Buck and Honeys has been with the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew since the beginning, with 4 locations in the Madison area. One is always near. People ask, why Buck and Honeys? Owner Tom Anderson places a high priority on the mental health of his employees. He has a mental health professional available for them should they need support. I don't know how many businesses go above and beyond their employee assistance program, but Buck and Honeys does. Dr. Toby Campbell is in the Buck and Honeys remote studios via cell phone to share his story. I think it's such a unique type of care that you offer, but it comes at a price potentially to you, but certainly your patients. In segment 2, you'll find out what that price is and how you do what you do as a doctor for your patients. Please stay tuned. Don't change that channel. You're not going to want to miss segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. We will be back.
If you, a loved one, or someone you know is experiencing a physical, mental, or emotional crisis, there is help and resources out there. Contact NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness Helpline, at 1-800-950-6264. This is a free service providing information, resource referrals, and support to people living with a mental illness, their family, providers, and the public. United Way 211 is available 24/7, 365, and offers free confidential assistance. They connect people with the local programs and services that can help. Dial 211. Emergency Crisis Services, dial 911. The Suicide Prevention Lifeline, dial 988. To connect via web, chat, visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Along with those numbers, there is help. You just need to say 3 words. I need help. Now, back to the show.
We are back. Welcome back to segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Tim Decora. We are in the Buck and Honeys remote studios on the east side of our great capital city of Madison, Wisconsin. The podcast is where we feature guests who share their story in hopes of helping others who may be struggling with what life throws at them. Today, I'm glad to be joined in the Buck and Honeys remote studios via cell phone by Dr. Toby Campbell. He's here to share his story and how he has managed his well-being and the well-being of his patients. Tell our listeners, because you're in oncology, you're an oncologist, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Tell our listeners where in the process of patient care that you come in.
Well, yeah, it's after someone has received a diagnosis of cancer. So every once in a while I meet someone before that's happened when they have, say, suspicious findings on some kind of test, like a CAT scan or something. And so I might meet someone before they've been formally diagnosed, but I'm usually meeting people who have been diagnosed with cancer.
And you're kind of the hard throwing righty, the guy out of the bullpen that's got to put out the win the game, so to speak, and you're kind of that guy.
Yeah, I'm kind of that guy. Often people arrive in my office telling me that they, haven't heard much of anything, or no one has been telling them what's going on. And I explain that some of that is on purpose, that I'm the person who can put all the pieces together and know the answers, not both to what's going on, but also what we can do about it. And so oftentimes people don't answer those questions, in part because they want to leave those answers to me. And so I usually tell people at the end of the day today, at the end of our visit, you will have answers to all of those questions. And then I obviously try real hard to make sure that comes true, even if the answers are hard,
Yeah, you're going to kind of paint the picture here in a little bit with some of the things we're going to talk about on the very beginning of your journey being in oncology and being that guy that kind of has to talk about a diagnosis to where you are today after an esteemed career with a lot of experience on how to talk about a cancer diagnosis, and then certainly the palliative care, which I'm a little more comfortable talking about and also a little more informed. Where did the passion, you kind of talked about it a little bit, but where did the passion come from to be an oncologist?
It's really meeting people who need help and are, to be honest, in a situation that's scary with a lot of symptoms. I chose lung cancer as my specialty, and lung cancer is a very serious disease that threatens or takes most people's lives that have it. Every once in a while you can cure someone, but most people with lung cancer, it's a disease that they're going to be living with for the rest of their life, however long we can try to make that. And it's a disease that causes a lot of symptoms. It's very common that people have a cough and shortness of breath and pain, and their appetite is low, and they're losing weight unintentionally. And this cancer, I describe it to people as a heavy burden. It's as if they had a backpack on that's heavy, and it's a backpack that they can never take off, and no one can help them with it. And so tasks that would normally not be something they'd even think about, like getting up out of a chair and walking outside, grabbing your mail, and coming back in. You don't even have to think about that. But if you had a backpack on that had, 100 pounds in it, you'd have to think about it, or you'd be tired when you got back, or need to rest and recover your breath. And so lung cancer is that kind of a burden on people's body. And so with my training in oncology and palliative care, I knew that I wanted to work with people that were facing a really serious diagnosis and had a heavy symptom burden, because I had just trained myself to help those people.
That is so cool. And I know you're going to talk about the metaphor kind of thing, and you just dropped in a metaphor about having a backpack and you're lugging that around, and you're not going to be able to take that off, nor is anybody going to help you out with it. But let's make do with what it is, and if by magic or our kind of care, something will happen where you can take it off at some point in the future, or you at least lighten the load for them. Since the show has a mental health component to it, when you first started in oncology and started working with patients, delivering news of a cancer diagnosis can't always be easy, but especially in the beginning, you certainly know how to do that much better now. Did you experience any anxiety or depression at the beginning of your career?
You know, Tim, you and I first met telling a story on the Moth stage here in Madison. And the story that I told, I called The Beast. And I think of cancer as like a beast. And, you know, I sometimes say that the patients that I'm working with, they are having a life-altering conversation, a once-in-a-lifetime kind of conversation where I have to tell them that, you know, this is not a curable cancer, for example, or telling someone that they're dying. And that's a conversation that they get to have one time, but I actually have to have it over and over, you know, every day. And so this burden that I'm carrying is kind of an accumulated one of visit after visit, day after day. And I do think that it's a real burden. And I don't know whether you call it depression or anxiety or fatigue or just or burnout, or, you know, I'm not sure that what the right diagnosis word to use is, but I absolutely experience, I don't know, feelings that probably could be any of those words. And I think I'm a little better at managing it at this point in my career than when I was more junior and just starting out. But to be honest with you, like, it's kind of hard month in and month out, year in and year out. Yeah, it's kind of hard. It's, you know, you got to have ways of taking care of yourself because it's a lot to cope with.
When you talk to maybe somebody that is a little bit younger, they finish medical school, or they reach out to you and ask, you know, hey, I want to get into oncology and palliative care, kind of following in your footsteps, what are some things that you would tell a younger person, or maybe even your younger self? Hey, here's what's going to happen in the early beginning. You know, you're going to have, your pulse is going to be up. You're going to feel like you don't want to get up out of bed some days, or you're just going to be a little lightheaded. These are some of the symptoms, and here's what you need to look for. And then here's also how you need to cope with them. What were some of those symptoms that you were experiencing, and how would you talk to your younger self now that you know what you know?
I think for me the biggest symptom is fatigue. And it can be a fatigue that's heavy enough that it can be hard to even engage, like with your family, let's say, at the end of the day. Because, you know, I sometimes think of it as like a vessel, right? I can hold so much. People are telling me really big things, Tim. I mean, sometimes people tell me things that they've never told anyone else. You know, I have a number of stories that people have told me, after which I say, who else have you told about this? You know, this is really big. And they say, I've never told anyone this thing, you know, that I am embarrassed by or whatever, you know. And so I think of it as this vessel, and I can hold so much. And I used to maybe not have as good of an understanding of how much my vessel could hold, and not realize when I just couldn't take any more. And then I think those days you go home really, I don't know, having taken on a lot of it, right? Because your vessel overflowed. And I think now I'm a little better at realizing, gosh, I've kind of taken as much as I can take today. And then I can change how I ask questions, right? I mean, I can actually change a little bit my interview style if I need to maybe not take on more that particular day, because I just can't do it. And I think my vessel has also gotten bigger as I've gotten older, and I'm a little better at realizing what's mine. Like, someone tells me a story that makes me also think about my kids or my family and have my own sadness, let's say, or frustration. But I'm a little better at realizing, like, oh, that sadness, that was theirs, you know, and I don't need to take that home because that's not my actual sadness. That was theirs, and I can share that with them, and I can be a part of it, and I can experience it, and I can feel bad for them and with them. But I also don't have to take it home. And I think I took a lot more things home when I was younger. So what I would tell my younger self is, hang in there. You're going to learn some things. You'll get a little better at it.
Yeah, I'd like that. It probably called detaching, that when you punch out for the day, you leave that sadness and you don't take that person's sadness with you. You acknowledge it, and it's something that you got to work on with them because they're your patient, but you have to unplug or you have to detach. Otherwise, things could go south real quick. How are you coping? I mean, how do you cope? I know you said you play some hoops with the hoops guys. You're doing some other things. What were you doing at the beginning with, how did you cope with that fatigue and maybe a little bit of stress or whatever? And then what have you added to it over the years?
Yeah. I mean, I think some of the normal things that people think of, like exercise and friendship, I think are two that are really important for me. I would say what I've added to my repertoire is writing narrative stories. Telling a story on the Moth stage where you and I met, that's the first time that I'd ever done anything like that. But several years ago, in collaboration with a local writer named Michelle Wilgen, Michelle helped me start a narrative medicine workshop for physicians, and others too, actually, but mostly physicians, where we write. And I've learned that the process of writing about a story that was sticky for me, that, what I usually tell people is if you wake up in the middle of the night thinking about this particular patient or that story, or, you wake up in the morning and that story is still there, then that's one you probably should think about writing about. Because when you write about it, you capture the key elements of the story. Why is this sticky? Why is this particular story really kind of can't leave my mind? And then you edit your story when you do it as part of a writing workshop. And some of those details really get clear and even more crystallized, and some kind of fade away. And the editing process helps you realize what's the really important parts of this story. And then at the end, we often share our stories, usually just in the little workshop group, with 8 other people or so. But the sharing of the story is really important. And I have learned over time that reading what I've written actually is the step that allows me to give the story away. And I don't wake up with it anymore usually. And I thought I would try it publicly on the Moth stage. Like, well, let me go tell a story in front of an audience of people that I don't even know. And it was pretty scary, but I will say I think it works. I think it's a way of giving away the hard ones.
Well, I hear a lot of people tell stories and have heard a lot of stories, but your story captivated me about one of the patients, and you just talked about the circumstances, but you gave this guy some bad news and he got up and walked out, and I got to go buy a car. And I thought that was a bit humorous, but it put into perspective, all right, if I get that same diagnosis, am I going to worry about that? Or am I going to go out and buy a car? I might be the guy that goes out and buys a car. I do have to ask you a question because you've stayed in this profession. I mean, you were going to be a doctor no matter what if you decided to shift gears and move somewhere else or do something else, but you stayed in a profession where you've got to deliver some news that people may not want to hear or can't comprehend or cope with. Is there burnout for doctors in oncology? Is it high? Is it low? Do people stay in it like you have?
So I don't know official numbers, but they always tell us, that burnout rates are high in oncology and palliative care. And I think that it's about the burden of taking care of patient families at this, really awful time in their life, So yes, while I don't know the stats, at meetings, like medical meetings when you go, they are often telling us that the burnout rates in oncology and palliative care are high. And there are people who that's their focus, is like, how do we help oncologists, say, with burnout? There's a guy called Tate Shanafelt who's spent his whole career just working on that particular issue, and there are others. It's enough of an issue that some have chosen to focus that for all their scholarly work.
Well, we need people in oncology who have had experiences and a lot of years of experiences to be able to deliver that news in a way that reassures them, gives them a little bit of hope, but at the same time also gives them the reality of what they have to go against. And fortunately, your patients and people that are going to come to you in the future are going to get that. An outstanding physician, oncologist with a number of years of experience that's going to be able to not only help the patient, but you also mentioned the extended family, the spouses, the children, the parents, and probably are fortunate to have Dr. Campbell as their guy. What has been your greatest contribution to the work you do so far up to this point?
Well,
did I stump Dr. Campbell?
Well, it feels a little bit like hubris. I would say, though, that what I work on are hard conversations. How do we as physicians most effectively communicate with people information that they don't want to hear, that they would rather not be talking about, and yet it's true, and so we need to talk about it. How do we help people make decisions in that space of feeling sad and scared and worried and, awful, but also need to make a decision? And maybe we need to make a decision that's going to play out like in the next few hours. So how can we navigate these really difficult, tricky, nuanced conversations in a way that lets people make big decisions that respects who they are and what matters to them? So my work has been largely in the construction. I sometimes call it design, the design of these conversations. And I try to develop strategies that help doctors navigate what for them is a conversation that they might have many times a week, but for a patient it's a once-in-a-lifetime conversation. But we want to do it well. I mean, we want to do it the best possible way so that we can provide the best possible care. So my greatest contribution is around high-risk decision-making conversations. And I've tried to help doctors from all kinds of different specialties, surgeons and kidney doctors and critical care doctors and oncology and palliative care and lots of different kinds of doctors, try to teach them strategies to be really good at those really hard conversations.
And I'm sure you're helping a lot of young doctors, middle-aged doctors, and maybe even doctors that are your age and above that still need that tweaking and new idea about how to deliver news that's, like you said, once in a lifetime. Do you plan to stay in oncology until you retire? When I say the word retire, does that even register with you yet, or can you see the...
I mean, I'm aware of it.
I'm aware of it.
I'm aware of it. But I'm not contemplating it yet, no. I mean, I'm a ways away, I think. So it's in the back of my mind. But no, I'm not ready. I got a lot of things that I'm working on. I mean, to your point, I always have something that I'm working on. I mean, many things. But I'm thinking specifically of a communication skill. So I'm honestly always working on a new communication skill. I mean, actually, the backpack that I mentioned earlier, that's actually probably the communication strategy that I'm working on right now. I've been playing around with it. I'm refining it. I'm making it better. How do I use that to help not just patients but also families understand what it's like to live with cancer, what it's like to be dying? And the backpack metaphor is a communication strategy that I actually I've been playing around with, but I just submitted a paper for publication. We'll see if it gets accepted. It's been rejected 3 times, Tim, but I've got it submitted to the 4th journal. That's kind of the life of an academic. There's a lot of rejection. You just keep trying. So that's an example of something I'm working on, and I'm always trying to work on something.
Well, I'm going to give you a metaphor, and it's one that you're familiar with, and hopefully some of the listeners, but you just got to keep taking the ball to the basket, and eventually you're going to score. I know you're going to get, they're going to chest up on you, and they might even block a shot of yours, but you got to keep going to the basket because you got some good stuff. Is there anything you would like to achieve before you retired? I picked up on a couple of things. I'm going to toss these out to you. And if there's something else, go in that direction as well. I think you got a book. I think you got a book in you just from how you sound, because you like the writing part, and you've got some stories and experiences. And then because you appeared on The Moth, and because I know you sent me your goal is maybe to be a keynote speaker or a presenter and telling these stories. Is that in the books for, pardon the pun, the book for retiring, before you retire, something to achieve?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to be honest, Tim, I'm writing a book right now. I actually have a book deal. So my book will come out in around August 2027. It's due to the publisher, which is called Post Hill Press. It's due to them August of 2026. So I'm writing right now, man. Hoping to turn out something that's good. Maybe it could be as good as Being Mortal. I mean, that I would say is the most well-known book in palliative care. But I'm working on a book right now about hard conversations.
I wouldn't mind someday when I get nice and big and Joe Rogan-like. Today I've got Atul Gawande and Dr. Toby Campbell in the Buck and Honey's remote studios. Maybe I'll be there someday, but that is awesome to hear that you're writing a book. So in addition to your oncology work, you also are in the podcast business. Tell us about your podcast and where we can see it and the name, in case anybody wants to follow along.
For sure. So it's about these extraordinary conversations that happen, right? These really hard conversations that are so important, that affect a patient or a family sometimes for generations. An extraordinary conversation in medicine is the one where someone goes to meet with a family in crisis in an ICU whose family member has had something devastating happen to them and they're brain injured or brain dead. And someone has to go to this family to say, do you think, your husband or your son or your mom would be interested in donating their organs? So that conversation for me, I just really wanted to understand it, because it is such a hard and amazing conversation that affects not just the lives of those individuals that are in that ICU room, but potentially of all the potential recipients that might receive these organs. So it's a really meaty conversation. And so my podcast is called Extraordinary Conversations Podcast, and the website is extraordinaryconversationspodcast.com. But if you search Toby Campbell or Extraordinary Conversations, you can find it on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. I interviewed about 50 people over about a 3-year period of time, and we ended up basically following organs from that original conversation in an ICU all the way through to the people who receive the organs and how life is going for them at that point. So it's 6 episodes, and it just tells the story of these amazing conversations that happen in organ donation and transplantation.
Those are conversations that need to happen, and unfortunately, if you don't know how to have them, those could be a tough situation. But because of some of the work you do and some of the work that people do in organ donation and having those hard conversations of, okay, your husband or spouse is no longer have any brain things showing up on the scan. We need to talk about organ donation, and that is a tough conversation to have.
The key thing is, what would that person tell us? And because I think, honestly, I have no preference whether someone is an organ donor or not. What's most important to me is that we get to the decision that's right for them. And that's really the crux of that hard conversation, is let's get this right.
This is where the subscribers, followers, and listeners take out the notebooks, pens, and pencils and jot some things down. Here are Dr. Toby Campbell's 5 suggestions that have allowed him to survive and thrive as a doctor in oncology. So I'm going to toss these in underhand softball style. Have you hit a softball before? I know you can kick a soccer ball and shoot a basketball, but have you hit a softball before?
Yep. Mm-hmm. I like to play softball.
Oh, good. Then
I can't hit a baseball, but I can hit a softball.
I'm going to toss these in underhand softball style. I'm going to have you hit these in about 60 seconds or less. So I'll toss the first one in. Number one, I could tell a story about empathy. People often ask how I do this work day in and day out. Go ahead and hit number one there. Strategies for surviving and thriving.
Yeah, when you're dealing with people, Tim, I think the key thing is to try to remember what's yours and what's not yours. We touched on this earlier, but what works for me is to picture it as a swimming pool. I can jump in with my patients and really be in the water with them, which is the sadness or the feelings that they're having. But I can then get out of the pool, towel off, leave the towel at work, and go home. And so it's really a framing. I don't want to separate myself. I don't want to build a wall between my patients and their emotions. I want to get in the pool with them, but I just want to be able to get out at the end of the day and remember what's mine and what's theirs.
And number two is you're a big metaphor guy, and I think metaphors help people grasp an idea, and you're good at tying the two together, metaphor and their diagnosis. Go ahead and hit that.
Yeah, I do think metaphors help us understand the world, how the world works, and maybe help us understand ourselves a little bit better than we did before. So my second survive and thrive is whether it's through metaphor or other reasons, but when you come away from a hard situation and you're trying to understand what's mine and what's theirs, I might try to think about what have I learned about myself, in this experience. And I've almost always learned something.
Good stuff. Number three, write. As in pen to paper or fingers to keyboard. Right. Go ahead and hit that.
Yeah. Pen to paper. Right. Or draw. I'm someone who often draws a picture of a conversation after it has happened, some way of helping me make sense of it. I mean, the picture that I drew most recently, I had met a younger person with a terrible cancer, and I just drew a picture of like a tornado, and then there were some other elements in there, but that helped me make sense of the conversation as it just happened, because why did I feel so chaotic? And I was like, because there was a freaking tornado going off in the middle of that conversation. That's why I felt chaotic, because it was chaos. But I didn't need to write words about it, but the picture helped me make sense of it and be able to just understand what had just happened.
Number four, debrief with colleagues. Go ahead and hit that.
Yeah, I think there are people in your life who understand what you're going through because maybe they do something similar, but finding that kind of fellowship in people who you don't have to explain all of it, right? Because they're 9/10 of the way there with you because they might share in the same experiences. But those are really important relationships, and those are worth cultivating, whether that means that, you go out with colleagues after work before you go home. I think those kinds of things are time well spent and help us sustain ourselves over time.
Good stuff. And number five, tell your story. Go ahead and hit that.
Right. Whether it's, this is, here you are running a podcast. Here I am lucky enough to be a guest on your podcast. It doesn't always have to be in a public forum, but you deserve to tell your story, whoever you are, right? And you deserve to have someone listen to your story. And I think you should feel confident in that, and that helps people survive and thrive.
It's therapy, and that's where the podcast got its start, was me telling my story. And I didn't have to make anything up. I didn't have to tell somebody else's stuff. It was mine, and it just came rolling out. And for me, it's been a therapy to kind of unload some things that were tough to talk about back in the day, but now it comes rolling off my tongue very easily, and I love to tell my story. And fortunately, I've had people that have wanted to listen to my story, and good stuff. You keep doing what you're doing. And number five, I think, is going to be a big one for you going forward. And I'm glad to be kind of on the front end of this, of you getting out there and doing a little more work and telling your story. But I absolutely loved our time together today. What an episode. I'm so glad you could join the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew today. Your story and how you managed to work through your patient struggles, and at times your own, is inspiring, and you're helping other oncologists go through kind of the same thing you did. Your story reminds us all to have coping skills or mental health tools in the toolbox when a person has met with life's challenges. And despite that, you are surviving and thriving. Our call to action, Dr. Toby Campbell just shared his story and what it's like to be a doctor in oncology. He has endured and persevered in a profession that is much, much needed. Here are Dr. Toby Campbell's 5 suggestions that have allowed him to survive and thrive. Number 1, I could tell a story about empathy. Number 2, use metaphors. Number 3, write. Number 4, debrief with colleagues. And number 5, tell your story. Final thoughts as we close another great episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. Are there any final thoughts, Dr. Toby Campbell?
Well, Tim, just to thank you and an encouragement to you to keep doing this important work that you're doing, because this creates a forum for people to connect and to do just those things, right? To share and to get support.
On our next episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, we will have another amazing guest in the Buck and Honey's Remote Studios who will share how they learn to survive and thrive. If you have a story to share or you know someone who does, please reach out to me at tdecora@gmail.com. Until next time, hang in there with whatever you happen to be going through, and with hard work, dedication, and determination, you can survive and thrive. Until next time, take care.